podcasting. Here we sit in a studio that we built out and spent a lot of money on to sit and have face-to-face conversations about. When we bring a guest on, it's about, hey, let's learn about this person.
Yeah.
Let's find out. It's really about the guests and what kind of value do you bring to the guests. But really, selfishly, it's also me sitting here learning. I heard you talk about that earlier.
Yeah.
So you have a really big podcast. We'll talk about all the ways they can find you at the end. But you've been doing podcasting for 4 to 5 years now, I believe.
Yes.
So can you speak to that? Because it seems like the norm now, and everybody wants to have one, whether it's in their basement. When I just throw out podcasting, what's that mean to you? Because you're so big in the world.
To me, podcasting is about having a conversation and recording it. The term podcasting means a lot of different things to different people. I hear people say, hey, I have a podcast, and really they have a video recording that they put on YouTube. For me, that's not truly a podcast in the terms of the way I mean it. Podcasting should be an audio platform. The purists, if you will, you record a conversation, whether it had video attached to it or not, you upload it into a hosting platform that syndicates it out to the major podcasting outlets, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Player FM, all the usual suspects. A lot of people want a show, a video show, and call it a podcast. And I'm not saying they're not, but I think for me, when someone says I have a podcast, my thought is, can I pull up Spotify? Can I pull up Apple Podcasts and see it, and see the show and listen to it? Not necessarily watch it, but listen to it, see the cover art. And if you can't do that, I think that you should choose a different term than podcasting. Not because I think it's an exclusive club, but people that listen to podcasts, part of the reason you listen to them is you can do it in the gym. You can do it while you're cleaning house. You can do it in the car. It's a medium that is an audio-based medium. And so if someone says, I have a podcast, and they just have a YouTube show, they're going to lose a lot of the power of a podcast because they're just putting it out in a video medium. Now, we all know that video is the most engaged kind of content, but people engage with podcasts longer. There's a study that Edison Research did that 93% of people listen to most or all of a podcast episode that they start. Now, the 4 metrics were just the beginning, less than half, more than half, or all of it. And more than half or all of it was 93% of the people that were polled. That was a few years ago, but I think even the most recent one's still close to 90%. And you think about that, if the average podcast episode runs around 40 minutes, I think is the kind of accepted length, you have 93% of people are with you for 20 or more of the 40 minutes. That's the power of podcasting. It's a high trust audience. Someone doesn't just want to watch 3 seconds of your reel or TikTok. They don't just want to see a 30-second video. They're listening for longer periods of time, and in part because of the places that they can listen to podcasting to. So I really feel like the pure form of a podcast is you have something to say, or you're having a conversation, you record that audio medium and put it out there for people to listen to.
So on your podcast, I just have this feeling that we talk about these ideas all the time, but it feels like it's becoming better all the time.
Yeah.
Right? So where's that come from? So you've been doing this for 4 or 5 years, and I find myself, there's so many different podcasts of people we can listen to, and we all have our person or our people because we only have so much time. So why is yours getting better?
Because we want to add value to the mortgage industry, right? In the beginning, we had a huge audience because there wasn't that many mortgage podcasts. The other thing that you have to really realize as a podcaster, it's not mutually exclusive. People that listen to podcasts, there's a ton of stats out there. I challenge anyone that's interested just to Google 2022 podcast stats, and there's all kinds of stuff about listeners and how long and what platforms and everything. But someone who listens to podcasts on a weekly or monthly basis listens to 6, 8, 10 different podcasts. Most of them are putting out 1 episode a week or a few a month, maybe a couple a week, but there's very few that are putting out podcasts on a daily basis because that's a lot of content to put out. It's very difficult to do. So you want to be a fan of podcasting. In my industry, there was only a few, so anybody that was interested in listening to mortgage podcasts by default listened to our show. It wasn't necessarily because it was a great podcast. I would like to think that we had some good episodes and we had some great guests. But as time went on and more podcasts entered the space, it wasn't that we were competing with other podcasts, but we wanted to be one of the ones that people still listened to regularly. And even if they didn't listen to us every week, if once a month they came and caught up on 2 or 3 episodes, then that was accomplishing what we were trying to do. So I took for granted that we had a lot of listeners and supporters, and we were kind of an OG podcast, that we stopped growing and innovating. We changed our logo a little bit, and we changed our cover art, and we might change the format of the questions. But it wasn't until recently that I'm like, wait a minute, we have an opportunity to be one of the best, not just for being the best sake, but for offering the most value and the most profound changes for people in business if we level up, if we get some cool new intro music, because our intro music was great 4 years ago because there wasn't any to compare it to. And now all of a sudden people are doing cool stuff. We need to continue to rise with the tide, if you will. That's where that whole concept comes from. We probably wouldn't have had as much of a reason to want to level up, make our podcast better, increase the quality of guests, change our show notes to where we have timestamps in there, whether we have new intro music. We got the guy that does a bunch of Ford truck commercials to do the red, kind of intro. I just found him on Upwork. It wasn't, or maybe it's Fiverr now, not Upwork, but we just found somebody that we thought was cool. And all of a sudden that's a cool story. And sometimes people will go listen to the podcast just to hear, we got a new cool intro license music. We got the guy that does the Ford truck commercials. It's all about conversations. And so we wanted some cool things to talk about maybe people that used to listen that moved on and listened to some different podcasts. Maybe our content got stale. We wanted to give them reasons to want to come back and listen and hear our guests and realize we're still going to add the same type of value, but we're going to do it better. We're going to ask better questions. We're going to pull better things out of our guests. And I realized that even in my prep leading up to a recording, because my calendar was full, I might only take 5 minutes to get everything connected, go on, do their intro, and then expect to be a good host and really pull the best out of what a guest has to offer. And I find myself defaulting to the same old type of questions, the same old type of conversations that I'd always had, as opposed to saying, what is this person's ethos? Where can they really change somebody's life and add value? And that takes intentionality. That takes consuming their content, understanding their communication style, and then doing my part. And I never learned how to be a host. I just went and did it a bunch, and it's like, okay, here's how you host a podcast. I've done it. I'm experienced. But it wasn't until this last year that I'm like, I really need to be a good steward of this cool opportunity and platform and audience and make sure that we're giving them what they deserve.
So who said, I don't know if it was Zig Ziglar, but it said, hey, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great.
That's awesome.
And so is that the evolution of this thing? Is it so simple in your world in the mortgage space that you've been in 18 years? My world in real estate just happens, been in business 18 years. Do you think that principle, how important is it? I'm not trying to impose that even on you in the conversation, but I'm like, man, okay, you started 4 or 5 years ago. You probably had no clue what you were doing when you started.
Nope.
You just started.
Yes.
I don't even know if you started with that principle in mind. I just have to get started. But is that the premise of the evolution of here you are now?
I don't believe that you can make something better that you've never done before. So many people spend time trying to plan something out and make it better, but unless you go and do it, you don't have a baseline to improve upon. What happens if the part that you're banking on being easy and doing this thing over here to make it better, what happens if the thing you thought was easy doesn't even work at all and it doesn't land? So yes, you have to get started to get any better. My podcast was very much ready, fire, aim. And I knew that I wanted to do a podcast, and I had probably a loose strategy behind what I was trying to accomplish. But I ended up starting the podcast because we had an Instagram page that we were doing a tip of the day. And if you think about early 2018 Instagram, everyone was doing a quote of the day, a pick of the day, an outfit of the day, whatever. We decided to do a mortgage marketing tip of the day. And this Instagram page was called Mortgage Marketing Expert because I owned the domain name. I thought it was a cool name to use. And in retrospect, we would have picked a shorter name, but, that's neither here nor there.
Ours is kind of long, too.
But it's a good name. I like you guys' name a lot. Yeah.
Well, your name's good.
Yeah. So it worked.
Yep.
So after about 30 days, we had like 1,000 people following this Instagram page, putting out this tip of the day. But then after 90 days, I started running out of stuff to say. There was only so many one-liners that I could come up with that was really adding value. And I thought, hey, I just need to go ahead and start a podcast. I'll bring experts on. I'll use their quotes to continue to feed this Instagram page. I didn't really expect people to listen to the podcast. Again, there was only a couple at the time. I didn't really listen to them. I didn't listen to a ton of podcasts at all. Like, transparently, I'd only listened to, I think, 2 different podcasts and maybe a couple of episodes each before I decided to start a podcast. But that's kind of my history.
So what gave you the confidence that you should do that?
Because the basic marketing formula that I've always operated with is the first thing is, who is your audience? Who's your target market? The second thing is, what value are you trying to provide that audience? What problem are you trying to solve for that audience? And then the third is, what's the most effective medium to deliver that message, that value, that solution to that audience? Mortgage professionals are busy. Real estate professionals are busy. I didn't sit and watch 30 minutes, 45 minutes, hour-long YouTube videos, but I did listen to Audible. I understood that audio could be done in a lot of places that you can't sit and watch video. And I thought, with busy professionals, podcasting starting to become more of a thing, it didn't seem that difficult to do. So let's go ahead and see if we can do that. So that was why we chose podcasting. And again, even if no one listened, I knew 2 things. One, I could use their information. I would quote them. I'd give them credit, but I could still continue to feed this Instagram page because we were getting results with that. We were getting a following. The second thing I knew is these are the people that were charging thousands of dollars a month for their product, for their service, for their coaching platform, and they were going to give me 30 or 45 minutes to ask them any question I wanted for free. I mean, it was a no-brainer. I was going to get to learn and network with these people. And then later on, I realized that there's a whole relationship that was built. There's the initial asking them to be on and coordinating with their team or them on when. You get the actual recording itself, plus the pleasantries before and the pleasantries after. And then when the episode's released and you send a follow-up or you send them content, you engage with them again. And so now all of a sudden, my podcast became about, how do I create relationships with these influential people, share their messages? That was kind of that next evolution, right? First, it was, I want to use the content to feed a social media page. The second thing is, holy crap, I'm creating relationships with these people. And then the third thing was, because I'm creating relationships with these people and they're sharing their experience on my podcast or the content that we created from it, people started seeing me as their contemporary. They saw me as their equal. They saw me, their audience, the guest's audience, saw me as a similar light of this person that they were following, and they would start listening to my stuff, and I would almost growth hack, right? Some of their people would listen, and they would stay and continue to be our audience. And that became the next thing is, okay, now I can create some credibility. But the whole reason I started the Instagram page or the podcast to begin with was as a regional manager who was trying to recruit and hire in markets outside of the ones that I had already had some credibility in. I was trying to give people something to find. We Googled people at the time. So I was doing some content marketing. I was doing some blogging, trying to get featured in articles so that whenever these recruits Googled me, I was giving them some type of value of why they might want to work with me or me help them build their team. It became social media because I saw this crazy guy named Gary Vaynerchuk, that we all know Gary V. I saw him talking about building a personal brand on social media, and I knew it was working in other verticals, but mortgage hadn't adopted it yet. So we started doing social through that Instagram page because I'm like, if I'm adding value and they hear some of the one-liners that I have that I was pulling from coaching calls with my existing team, they can look through those very quickly and see that I know what I'm doing. I can help them build their business. That was the whole premise behind it. The brand and the networking and being able to become friends with people of influence or have some of these people as mentors, that was not even really a conscious thought. It became a thought because those opportunities presented themselves. But the whole idea from the very beginning was, how do I showcase to people that don't know me, that don't know my company, that I have the ability, the experience, the skill to help them build their business so that if I want to recruit them, they want to come to work for me. That was the initial hypothesis.
So you touched on personal brand.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say that, I have a thought. It's a question and a thought. Is a personal brand just showing already who you are, showing the world, like this is me, or creating what that brand, what you feel the brand needs to be to speak to the marketplace to obtain the business you want? So what should it be? Do you just show who you already are, or do you need to work on, refine, create this brand before you even become that person? Is that, which one do you do? You know, because, and I'm not talking about fake it till you make it. I'm not talking about that. What if who you are is not good enough for the marketplace? Is that okay and it will become good enough? Like, this is just a whole conversation around this thing. Can someone in the mortgage business, the real estate business, can they just go ahead and show who they are right from the beginning?
Yes.
6 months in business. So it's yes.
Yes.
Why?
Because you're going to attract people that are like you. The assumption people have is that we have to label ourselves as an expert, that we have to put ourselves in some platform, right? The fake it till you make it. I think that that's such a wrong outlook on things.
Mainly, yeah, faking it seems like a bunch of bullshit,
right? But that's essentially the premise
right,
here when we're talking about a personal brand.
Is
we're going to create a brand that may not actually be accurate for the purposes of trying to create a business so that it becomes accurate, right? That's a losing proposition, and I'll tell you why. Because we attract people to us that are like us. That's who's going to engage in our content. If you put out content for people that are not like you, when they engage with you, that's not going to be a positive experience. That's like saying, I get along with these types of people in person, but I'm purposely going to go talk to these types of people and expect that to go well. That's not going to go well. So bottom line, you want to attract people to you like you are, and you're going to attract people to you like you are, but we make the assumption that it has to be this certain caliber of people or type of person. That's wrong. That's where abundance mindset gets proven true. For the people that are willing to take action, there's plenty of business out there for you if you do the work, because so many groups of people aren't being catered to. It's the same reason that niching down works. And I'll come back to that because I got a whole lot to say on niching down and positioning. But when it comes to a personal brand, there's so many mistakes and misinterpretations of what a personal brand is. We need to stop using the term because people focus on the brand more so than the person, right? They want to come up with a shtick and a logo, and they think they need a whole business within a business. And if we'll reframe it to a personal brand is really just reputation, it all makes sense for people, especially an older demographic that personal brand. No, but you talk about reputation, their spine stiffens, right? They can relate to that. They understand that. So in our workshops, in the way we coach our clients, the way we coach people in our business, building a personal brand needs to be reframed as digitizing your reputation. Not just talking about what you do and the successes you have at what you do. It needs to be talking about who you are and the mistakes that you've made and the journey that you've taken, right? Gary, one of the most important things that's ever been said on social media about this is by Gary Vee, and he says, document, don't create. If we document our lives and we share what's really going on instead of this Instagram effect where we take 1,000 pictures and post the best one and pretend like that's reality, we all know that that's not reality because we ourselves are trying to do that, right? But yet we still take it as that's someone else's reality.
Yeah, if you're in the sales and the service business, what's going through my mind is at some point we still have to meet the customer face to face.
Yeah.
And if you're not the same person, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're not the same person that you're showing yourself to be, you're going to lose credibility instantly. The reason why they showed up is not the reason. They're not going to stay.
Right.
They're not going to come back. And you're like, wow, this person's fake. They're not real. I don't know. Is that the same principle?
I think so. I think that, yes, you have to show up as you. It's about being relatable. If you're trying to put out this expertise and how much business you're doing and how great your business is, it's going to have the opposite effect. One, because most people aren't out to crush it. We all want to think we are, but let's be honest. Most people aren't out to crush it.
Why not? Why aren't we?
That's a whole other conversation. Let me tie this down and then I'll come back and answer that. most people just want to do better than they set out to be or than their parents were. I have a good friend that you and I talked about in detail. His dad and family, aunts, uncles, whatever, there was kind of this threshold of one of the family members that was doing really well, and the whole goal was to do as good or better than that family member. Well, my friend achieved that in his mid-20s, and he just kind of stayed there ever since because in his mind, he just wanted to do better than this place. I think that's most people. Most people maybe have an outside desire to make it big. They just don't have the belief that they can, so they kind of settle. That's a whole set of mindset and programming that most people can't undo for another person. But the reason that we don't is exactly that. We don't have the belief because we weren't programmed that way, and the amount of effort and time it's going to take to create the belief in ourselves or reprogram ourselves is almost more work than it's going to take to actually be successful. So I say all that because if you just show who you are and stop trying to elevate yourself to this elite status, more people will relate with that than not. And we don't have to be a Ryan Serhant or a Gary Vee or an Ed Milet or some of these huge personalities. And if you look at what really made them successful, all they did was niche down and really get the attention of their specific audience. And then they scaled it from there. Niching down is super important. It makes you more referable, not less. In the mortgage business specifically, I tell people, if you'll choose a niche, it gives people a reason to remember you. So if you want to focus on investment properties or VA loans for veterans or whatever, if you think about it like a medical field, if you have a friend who's a specialist in medical and you need another type of specialist, you're going to call your friend who's a specialist and say, hey, do you know one who specializes in this? So, and you remember that. Real estate is a perfect, ripe industry for niching down because very few people do it. And everyone has a brother, aunt, uncle, cousin, dog dad who's a realtor. We all know tons of realtors, but we don't remember them because we can do everything. And we tend to want to specialize in things that we know and like, which is great. But if you'll have a very specific niche and own that space, you'll only do a quarter, 30% of your business in that niche because people will come to you and ask you about other niches, and you can be like, yeah, I do that as well.
So if you were a realtor, which I know you never would be.
Mm-hmm. No, I never would be.
I wouldn't be a mortgage loan officer either.
Yeah. Good.
So we have a ton in common.
Yeah, that's right.
This is great. What would you niche down in? If it was the last career on the face of the earth in our country where you felt like you could scale and earn the level of income that you want to in your life to unlock whatever financial things you want, what would you niche down as being a realtor?
I would, very similar to the team we built on the mortgage side, we would teach people how to build real estate wealth. And the reason is the whole reason we started our team, I believe that most people from their early 20s to their late 60s and everywhere in between have an outside desire to own investment properties. And some of them want to sell everything and live into VW bus or an RV and travel the world, or they want to increase their net worth for retirement purposes. And both of those things, both passive income and net worth, can be accomplished through real estate and is more approachable than almost any other industry for the average person. If I heard on a podcast this morning, she was talking about why she has a huge real estate portfolio, and she said barrier to entry. If you want to invest in stocks, you want to buy $1 million in stock, you got to have $1 million cash. You want to buy $1 million in investment real estate, you might only need $300,000 or $400,000. It lowers the barrier of entry. Now, not everybody's going to be in the market for $1 million in anything, but you want to talk about even at these prices, you can find a few $100,000 property, and you only need, if it's a first-time purchase or if it's a primary residence, 3.5%, 5%. If it's an investment property, 20, 25, 30% down. That's more approachable for most people. So if you're a real estate agent, if you're in the real estate business or a realtor, I would say instead of walking around telling people you are a realtor, you should walk around and tell them, I help people build wealth with real estate. Because the next question everybody asks is, interesting, how do you do that? Which isn't that the whole idea? You want to start a conversation? And here's something that I've been saying a lot lately that I think is super important. If you want to do more business, you need to start more conversations. And I don't care how you start the conversations, but you need to get people to want to have conversations with you. Most of the time, creating those conversations is as simple as engaging in someone else's social media posts. We love the dopamine rush when someone engages in our content. We love that people like something that we did. That's the easiest way and the quickest way to start a conversation with anybody, I don't care what level they're at, is engage in their content. Once you have that conversation or get the conversation started, that's whenever you have an opportunity to leverage it. Are you asking the right kinds of questions? Are you saying the right things? Or do you do what most realtors do, what most mortgage professionals do, which go into sales mode?